everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you my February wrap up. If I'm being honest, February was kind of a up and down reading month. I went through a couple of almost like slumpy type periods, but not really slumpy. I've just had a couple of, as in I haven't not been wanting to read, I've just had a couple of periods where I've been really busy, haven't been getting to as much reading as I would like to, plus I was reading some really long books, so that was taking up a lot of time. I did still read a lot of books, which we'll get to in my statistics, because I read a lot of audiobooks, which again we'll get to in my statistics. So the statistics. In February, I managed to complete a total of 18 books. The 18 books were made up of 17 novels and 1 graphic novel. I read 8 books in physical format, I read 2 ebooks, and I listened to 8 audiobooks, which may be the most I've ever read in a month, and it was a short month. Having said that though, I think that's partly due to the fact that a couple of the audiobooks that I read were quite short. And so I ended up reading them in a day, so I just got through a lot of them. And then excluding the audiobooks, I read 6 books that I owned and 4 books from the library. I read a total of 6,984 pages, which averaged out to a total of 244 pages per day, which I'm very happy with. I should give a disclaimer, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but if in case you don't realize, my average pages per day includes, and my page number total includes audiobook listening. So I'm not reading 250 or 244 physical pages. It includes the equivalent of the audiobook pages that I listen to. The shortest book that I read in February was 128 pages. That was the graphic novel that I read. And then the longest book that I read was 699 pages. I think I completed 3, possibly even 4 books that were over 500 pages in February, so I was reading a lot of longer books like I mentioned. The highest star rating that I gave in February was I gave 2 different books 4.5 stars, and the lowest star rating that I gave was a 2.75, which is actually quite good for me. So my average star rating for the month was 3.67, so it was above a 3.5, which I love. And I'm actually just quickly flipping back in my notebook while I check with you guys, because I think, yeah, my average last month, it's a whole 0.1 of a star higher than what my average was last month, which last month was still above 3.5. So overall, in terms of quality of books, so far in 2019, my reading year has been pretty good, even though I've only had 1 5-star read. It has still been pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how my reading has been going. So let's jump straight in, talk about the books. I will only be talking about the 8 books that I read in the second half of the month. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on the 10 books that I read in the first half of the month, you can check out my mid-month wrap-up, which I'll link in the cards. You can also go back and check out my reading vlogs that I did throughout February, where I talk about the books in that as well. But let's jump straight in and talk about all of these books that I did manage to complete. So the first book I want to talk about is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. For those of you who maybe don't know, this is the first book in the Dark Artifices series. The Dark Artifices is a spin-off series of both the Mortal Instruments and the Infernal Devices, which all of these series kind of collectively all together make up the Shadowhunters Chronicles. We're following 2 main characters in this one who are both Shadowhunters. Shadowhunters are people who are kind of descendant from angels who were put on Earth to kind of protect humanity from demons and forces of darkness. The world has warlocks and witches and fairies and werewolves and vampires. Did I already say werewolves? I feel like I did. All kinds of magical creatures. I really enjoyed this. I love all of the characters. The main romance that we have going on in this series is also super angsty, which I'm totally here for. I just love me a really good deep level of angst. This book has it in spades. Yes, I really do. I can't really go too much into this because it is, even though technically the first book in this series, it is so deeply, we are so deep into the Shadowhunters Chronicles overall that I can't really say too much without spoiling things, but I did really enjoy this, and in the end I gave it 4.25 stars. I then read a book called Unenchanted by Chanda Han. This is one of my Kindle backlist books that I was getting to, so it's a book that I got for free off Amazon a really long time ago. It's the first book in a series, and it basically follows a main character who is finds out in the book that she's descendant from the Brothers Grimm, and that means that her family is cursed by fairy tales, and she has to basically play out all of these different kind of fairy tales in order to break the curse. That's kind of what you're told. One of the problems I have with it is that it's really not well explained. I was very unclear on exactly what the character needs to do to break the curse, because it seemed like at one point it was mentioned there are over 200 fairy tales. So that seems like it's going to take a real long time, but it's very unclear on exactly like what is required. It also, I don't think the writing was particularly good. The story felt very juvenile as well. I think the main character was supposed to be around 16, but it felt kind of more middle grade in nature. It's also, it is part of a series, so there's stuff that's very much just like dropped at the end of the story that's not wrapped up at all, which obviously you'd have to read on. I only gave this book a 2.75 star rating. It was my least favorite book of the month, but I enjoyed it just enough to read on to the second book. So I checked and my library has it, so I'm going to read the second book from my library and then see whether I want to continue or not. But I was intrigued, kind of, but yeah, it's definitely not the most fantastic book ever written. Like I said, I gave that one 2.75 stars. I then listened on audio to My Favorite Half Nightstand by Christina Lauren. This one is narrated on audio by Shayna Tribideau and Deacon Lee. So this is I'm not sure if people say that it's new adult, but I would consider it adult romance. I consider it adult because the main characters are in their very like 29 to like 32 type of age range. So they're adults with like adult lives, you know, they've already got established jobs and careers and all of that type of thing. It basically follows two characters who are really, really good friends, and they have one night a kind of, they call it a half night stand because they didn't like spend the night, but they slept together one night, and they've remained friends, and then now their whole group of friends, including some of their other friends, are all decided to go onto this dating app to try find dates for this particular function that they've got coming up. And so they all join these dating apps, and then through circumstances, one of them ends up matching with the other. Well, they end up matching with each other. One knows who the other one is, and the other one doesn't. And that's kind of where the story, kind of the, you know, main plot of the story comes from. I had never read anything by Christina Lauren before. I have one other book by her. I think it's Dating You, Hating You, that I've got on my physical TBR. Never read anything by her, or by them. I know that it's a pen name for two authors writing together. They are very, very popular, and I can see why. I really, really enjoyed this book. I found the main characters incredibly relatable. For me, particularly the main female character, who's, I think her name was Millie. I just related to her a lot. I mean, she's an adult in an established job, which is where I am at in my life, so I found that relatable. And she is very, like, emotionally closed off. Like, it's kind of turns typical gender stereotypes on their head, in that the male character is more of the romantic, open-minded, emotional type of character, and the female character is the more closed off, emotionally character. And I found her really relatable. And I guess, like I said, just the more time period in their life, I really liked the romance. I really liked all of the characters and all of the friendships. And I just really, really did. I like thoroughly enjoyed my reading experience with this book. And I gave it 4.5 stars. I then listened to another audiobook, which is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This one was narrated by Helen Duff. This is classified as a thriller. I would describe it more as like a family drama. It's about a woman whose daughter has gone missing 10 years prior, and it's basically about her journey to discover what happened. So it sounds like it's got kind of a mystery aspect, but to me it wasn't very mysterious. It was very obvious what had gone on, but while it maybe took away from the story a little bit, it wasn't the main thing that the book is like about. It's about her journey of getting there. It's very much more of a character study than it is a mystery. I really liked all of the relationships in the book. She's got a very strange relationship with her remaining children, who are now like adults, and it's also she's trying to form a new romance. So the main thread of the book, apart from the fact that the daughter's gone missing, is her forming a relationship with this new man who then has a young daughter who looks very similar to her daughter that went missing. Yeah, and so we've got her trying to form this relationship as an adult after having not lived much of a life for the last 10 years because she's been dealing with this horrible thing that's happened to her in her life, and all of her strained relationships with her family and all of that type of thing. And while, like I said, it wasn't very mysterious or thrilling, I thought it was really well written, and I really enjoyed kind of all the character study stuff that was going on in there. And in the end, I gave that one 3.75 stars. Next, I read Paper Girls Volume 2 by Brian K. Vaughan. If you guys saw my review of the first book, I enjoyed the artwork, still true. I was very, very confused, still true. I think I enjoyed this one a little bit more because I already knew what I was getting into going into it, but I am very worried that it's going to be, the whole series is going to be overly confusing without enough answers. Or like that it's going to take too long to get those answers, and then I'm going to become bored quickly with it because I'm going to get frustrated and impatient with it. But I did enjoy this one a little bit more than the first one, and in the end I gave it 3 stars. I then completed Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This is obviously the second book in the trilogy. Really, really enjoyed this one as well. Enjoyed this one just as much as the first one. I really love all of the diversity that Cassandra Clare is trying to put into this series. I can't speak to whether any of it is overly good representation because I'm not a member of any of those communities. I'm not Latinx, or I'm not on the LGBT community. I'm not a part of the LGBT community. I'm not, like I said, a person of color. I'm not any of the things that she is trying to represent in this series, but I really like that she's making the effort to really put that in there. And for the most part, from my perspective, it seems pretty genuine, and I thought, for me, it seems like it's fairly well done. And I really did enjoy this book. Like I said, I enjoy all of the characters. I'm really excited to see where this is going. I did kind of predict where this ended up, but that didn't necessarily take away from my enjoyment of it, because I did really enjoy this. And again, I gave this one 4.25 stars. I then read another audiobook, The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. This is a middle grade novel. We're following a gorilla who is in captivity in a like mall, like circus, zoo type. Like, it's not a zoo because it's a very like small mall situation. Anyway, it's just basically about his life in there, and there are other animals and stuff in there. This was so beautiful and so heartwarming. This really hit me in the feels. I really connected to this story emotionally. I liked all of the commentary in there on keeping animals in captivity, and all of the discussion kind of around, well, not discussion, but that it's kind of mentioned in there about making animals do tricks for people's pleasure and stuff, and how that's not necessarily a good thing. I liked all of that. One of the only problems I had with it is that I felt like it was pushing a very like pro-zoo stance, and I don't know. I literally don't know where I fall on like the zoo kind of thing, but I did really enjoy it. I connected to it so emotionally. I thought it was a really beautiful story, and I gave it 4.5 stars. And then the final book that I read in the month of February was Scorching 16 by Janet Evanovich. This is the 16th book in the Stephanie Plum series. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was a little bit, they're always really campy, kind of, and ridiculous. This one was no different. It's got very much to do with a side character that I'm not overly invested in. There wasn't enough of the main romance that I enjoy in this one. So it was just very much just kind of okay. And in the end, I gave that 3 stars. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of February. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you've got any thoughts, or what you guys were reading and really enjoying in February. I would love to know. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.